Blessings to one and all, and welcome to the message. I'm your host, Paul James Caden, and I'm making this short podcast slash YouTube video tonight in memory of a fellow YouTuber, a gentleman by the name of Brian Foster, who passed away on April 19th, 2022. I just learned of this earlier today myself. And many of you listening may not know who Brian was. He had a YouTube channel called Spiritism. Brian was a spiritist and followed the spiritist religion as codified by Allan Kardec in the spiritist literature. I had some interaction and communications with Brian in the past, and I always wanted to have him on my show. And it just never really got around to happening. But Brian was a legitimately humble, nice, caring individual. He had about, I think, roughly 2,600 some odd subscribers on his YouTube channel. He didn't get a lot of views, maybe 80 some, 90 some. Sometimes it might spike up into, 100 or 200 depending on the subject. But it was a relatively small, humble channel. But he always kept going because he believed in what he taught. He believed and was very invested in his faith. And he wanted to make these videos just to help people. Brian came to his faith in Spiritism years ago. He explains that, he, at one time when he heard about religion and spirituality, he'd say, that's, a lot of bunk. He was very much into furthering his career, being successful in the world and, with his, his job, his money, his career path. And one day he was exposed to Spiritism, and I think he got a message at a Spiritist meeting that just changed his life, and he devoted his life to growing as an individual, growing spiritually, and helping others. He was really a nice, nice man. I can't stress that enough about Brian. I actually learned of his passing on Facebook. I don't really go on Facebook that much, but I went on today and I just scrolled down a little bit and I saw his photo and someone who put, Brian Foster had passed away. And I asked the question, geez, what happened? He was maybe a little older than me. He wasn't really an old, man or anything of that nature. And, I thought of making like an ode to, a nod to Brian. And then I said, maybe I will, maybe I won't, But then I got this message and someone asked me and said, hey, I saw your message, your reply, your comment on the post about Brian's passing. I was looking at your podcast and your Facebook page and your spiritual beliefs. And the person had asked me, they said, I'm new to the religion of Spiritism. And, a lot of, this person's family and friends were, uh, religious, in the Christian faith. And we're really kind of saying, hey, this whole thing of Spiritism, it's demonic. They're talking to demons and, you better get away from it. Something bad will happen. So this person was shaken up thinking, oh gosh, did something happen to Brian because he was a spiritist? Did some demon, end his life prematurely? What did I think about this kind of thing? And, I thought it would be a good idea to give this kind of remembrance to Brian because, like I said, he was, just a really humble, decent human being. But also to address that question because I think it's an interesting one. And, myself being a mystic and mysticism gets a lot of bad rap in the world today because it was really hijacked by a lot of other spiritual movements that get into some really peculiar things. But mysticism, really, in the Jewish, Christian, and Islamic practices, is nothing more than contemplating and meditating on the presence of God and feeling that presence of God around you or within you. It's connecting with the beloved. That's what mystics call God. And that can be euphoric when you make that connection where you feel God so close to you, and sometimes in those moments of meditation of, what many call practicing the presence of God, you might hear or get little intuitions about things that are going on in your life. It's kind of like spiritual advice. Do this, do that, or don't do this, don't do that. And you come out, you follow that advice, and sure enough, it was the right advice. Now that's, something that's maybe a little more rare, in mysticism. But basically, that's all mysticism is: practicing and meditating on the presence of God around you and within you, connecting with God, the beloved. The desire of the mystic's heart is to be close to God and to know God as a personal friend and companion. And this was something that I did all my life. Some of you probably heard in my previous podcasts years back when I was a little, kid. My parents were not religious. I didn't hear anything about religion, and I remember being, 3, 4, 5 years old and feeling this very loving presence around me and just, being comforted that it was there, and I would talk to it. And later, of course, through my grandparents, I learned this concept of God and said, oh, God, that's, who that must be. And I would talk to God, just like he was a friend. So some would say that I was just a natural born mystic. I was born with this knowing and this desire, this connection, with the divine. But it's been something there all my life. And I say all that to say this. As someone who, I've studied a lot of religions, I've always, had my personal mystical connection with God. And, I say this about the question, oh, is Spiritism bad? Oh, did something bad happen to Brian? Did some, evil spirit get him in the end? And I'm sure that, unfortunately, there's a lot of religious people out there that would agree with that. And I think that's really, really sad, that there's religious people in the world, whatever they may be, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, other, who think if you don't have a certain religion or even practice that religion the way that I do, the way that my group does, you're being deceived. You're being displeasing to God. You're going to hell when you die. I think that is just one of the saddest, ways of seeing life and other people. Especially someone like Brian, who was just, he put his all into what he did. He wrote books, he did podcasts, and he just wanted to help people. He wasn't in it for the money. He wasn't in it for fame or recognition. He did what he did just out of the love of helping people and trying to bring people closer to God. So let's suppose, let's just make believe for a minute that Brian was deceived by this, false religion. Okay, well, the way I would see this is that there are so many religions in the world, and we're affected by the beliefs of our family, our culture, the country we might live in. Might not be a Christian, culture. It might be a Buddhist culture. It might be a Hindu culture. It might be something else. It might be Islamic. It might be, Spiritism. Spiritism is very big in Brazil. It's a very big part of their religious culture. And Spiritism is, by and large, a Christian religion, although it believes in, contacting spirits and things of that nature. But let's make believe that there's only one true religion and one true way to practice that religion, and all else is going to be rejected by God. It would almost be like God setting up for failure and dooming to hell the people of other cultures, other nations. There's so many factors as to what drives a person to believe in what they believe. Now we look at Brian's story. He was, I kind of pretty much an atheist, all that religion, it's all nonsense. He's pursuing his career. I think it was his wife that took him to a spiritist meeting, and something happened there that really kind of shook the foundation of his life and what he thought he knew. And then he dedicated his life to doing God's work, spreading the message of Spiritism, the faith that he believed in. Now, if someone is really putting all that effort into helping others, whatever their religion is, they really have a heart to help other people, to bring other people out of materialism and the trappings of this material world, bringing them closer to God. And their heart is really in it because they love people, they love God, they see the higher truth, the higher reality of, the universe that we live in. Is that a horrible or bad thing that someone is going to be damned for? I don't think so. I think that is just a, ludicrous way to look at things and to even, put God in that kind of box. We are limited human beings. We don't know all there is to know. And, this podcast being kind of based on that Quranic perspective of things, it reminds me of the Sufi. The Sufis are the Muslim mystics, and they respect all religions. They say it doesn't matter what you call God. You call him Buddha, you call him Jesus, you call him Krishna. There's one God with many names. If a human being turns to God and prays, then that person is praying to the one true God, no matter what their culture calls that God. So the Sufi are very respectful, very embracing of other religions. And actually in Sufism, there are those who do. There's not, I can't even say that, there's a few or a lot because I'm not sure of the percentage, but there are those Sufi who are Islamic mystics who practice Spiritism or spiritualism. Or they'll say in meditation, a message will come to them from the angels, or maybe from a deceased loved one, or a deceased loved one of somebody who, might be in the room meditating with them. So Sufis are really open to a lot of things. And Sufism says, hey, we are the true version of Islam because, we look at Muhammad himself, our prophet, who was someone who really meditated and, engaged in a lot of things that would be considered mystical practices. And he did. They're not wrong about that. I mean, there are some dogmatic Muslims who would say, oh, no, 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 just like the Christians, anything that says, mysticism, they're going to say, oh, no, 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 no way. But, that's just kind of being so dogmatic, you can't see past the blinders you put on your own eyes. But when you really dig into the life of Muhammad, you see there were a lot of things he did and his own personal beliefs, the way he interacted with the world around him and the Spirit of God, that you would say, this man was a prophet and a mystic. So the Sufi are not wrong about that. And I tend to agree with the Sufi. I have a great love for the Sufi, as many know, and that's more or less the branch of Islam that I am interested in. And I don't think we can put God in a box and say you have to worship him this way, you have to pray this way, you have to believe this way. I think there's a lot of people, a lot of cultures, a lot of beliefs, a lot of religions, and who knows what brings one person out of the secularized world into religion, into believing in God. Maybe that person has a little bit different idea of God of someone else, but perhaps they're all praying to the same God no matter what they call him, if they have a sincere heart. So that's certainly my belief. I agree with the Sufi on that particular notion. So do I think, someone like Brian Foster was deceived or, killed by a bad spirit? Absolutely not. Certainly not. I don't think that at all, because he really put his heart into helping people. He was very sincere. He believed in his heart that he was doing God's work to help others and to spread the gospel according to Spiritism. And, when it comes to, spiritists and spiritualists, and contacting spirits and, talking to the dead, I really believe that these things can happen. Whether a person, connects with an angel, connects with a loved one, or, whatever the case may be. I believe these things can happen. But it is up to God whether or not he's going to allow it to happen. We have stories all over the world, many stories of people that lost a loved one, and they weren't seeking out mediums or spiritual readings of that nature, and suddenly, they walk into a room and there's mom or dad standing there in this brilliant light, and they just say, "I'm okay. I love you. I'm okay." And they just evaporate. I think that is God, for whatever reason, whatever the will of God might be in that moment, to allow that loved one just to see their son, their daughter, their husband, their wife, whoever, one last time on planet Earth, just to let them know, "I love you and I'm okay. I'll see you again." So I believe these kind of things can happen. People have dreams where a loved one comes to them and gives them advice about a problem that they're facing, in this world. And that advice turns out to be spot on. Sometimes it's a dream of Jesus or an angel or the Prophet Muhammad or whomever. I do believe, being the will of God, these things can and do happen. But I think the difference is, and this is what I heard Brian talk about a lot, that it necessarily isn't a heavenly spirit's job to come and give us all these big prophecies about what's going to happen in the world. It's this and it's this and this. I think that's where people get caught up in fanaticism, unreality, delusions. I've always thought, since I was younger and I thought about these things, that if God sees fit that a spirit from the heavenly realm is going to bring us a message, it is usually a personal message of growth. It's like advice. Don't hang out with Dave. Dave is going to get himself in trouble. He's going to get himself killed. Don't go to that party with Dave on Saturday night. Bad things are going to happen. Please stay home. The person wakes up from that dream or comes out of that visionary experience and says, "I feel like that was real. I'm not going to that party." And then to find out, Dave drove to the party all, coked out of his mind or under the influence and wraps himself around a telephone pole, and he and the people traveling with him, died. So I feel that, if God, in his infinite wisdom, allows these things to happen, it's more of a guidance and an advice to those of us on earth rather than grand prophecies of what's going to happen. And again, these things are according to the will of God. And I personally don't think they're things that happen every day or that we can just snap our fingers and, as I always say, dial up the dead. That's just my personal opinion. Others may have different beliefs about this, and, they're welcome to their beliefs. But I think Brian was, as I said, just a wonderful individual. And I think upon returning to God, all of that is certainly taken into consideration. All the hard work he did just to get a positive message out there, just to help people, tell them, love your neighbor, don't hold grudges, don't get angry at God when you have trials and things in your life because these things are going to happen for a reason. He just had a lot of positive messages. He communicated with anybody on his YouTube channel that had a question or a comment. He just really wanted to help people and really wanted to get the message of his faith out there to help change people's lives. And I personally believe in my heart, God will respect that, God will honor that, and God will reward him for that. If you want to look at Brian's channel, it is just simply called Spiritism, and his name is Brian Foster. A wonderful individual. Can't say enough about just the humbleness of this man in the work that he did. So I wanted to do this short podcast. I wanted to talk a little bit about Spiritism, spirit communication, what I feel about those particular subjects, because I know a lot of people down it. There's a lot of people that are saying, we're gonna burn in hell for any little thing, any little infraction, and I just think that's counterproductive to religion, and I think it scares and confuses people. When you hear a lot of these people, I've heard a lot of Catholics say it, well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We may have thought we were doing something good and wonderful, even for God, but oh boy, we're going to hell in the end. And I think that's just an awful thing to say. Because a person thinks they're being sincere, they think they're doing the right thing, they're helping others, they're trying to live by the golden rule, but guess what? That person's going to hell because they didn't believe the right thing. They didn't sit in the right church or the right temple or the right mosque or listen to the right priest or rabbi or imam or guru or whomever. I personally feel that those kind of opinions and messages are horrible, and they really besmirch the person and the character of God. So, as I say, there's a lot that factors in what a person believes, their culture, their life path, things they encounter. And I look at someone like Brian and I say, there should be more Christians and Muslims like Brian because he really cared. He had a heart for other people and a heart for God. And, if God is going to throw him in the eternal roasting bin for that, I don't believe that. That wouldn't be a God of justice and love and mercy. I certainly think Brian will be rewarded for the efforts he put in and for the people he inspired. I'm not a spiritist, but he inspired me with his humbleness. Anytime I watched one of Brian's videos or had any interaction with him, I always came away saying, I want to be a better person. I want to interact with people like Brian does. He's just, damn, he's good. It's that that kind of feeling and thoughts I walked away with, and yeah, he was really awesome. And I'm gonna leave a link to his YouTube channel below, so if any of you want to go check it out and see what I'm talking about, just the humbleness, the being real in his videos. I'm sure you'll see what I'm talking about as soon as he starts talking. So I wanted to make this little video. I just wanted to do an ode to Brian Foster. He was one of the nicest people I've met in many years. And just to say, hey, rest in peace, Brian. Great job doing what you did. And brother, I'll see you on the other side. God bless.